Most founders throw around the word KPI like they know what it means. But if you used to actually ask them, most couldn't even tell you. But the crazy thing is, businesses that actually track and act on the KPIs are 96% more likely to hit their growth targets, which in itself is a crazy stat. Yet, most founders couldn't even name you more than 3. And look, I'll be honest, I used to ignore KPIs completely because I simply didn't understand their value. When I first started out in business, I believed that if I just worked harder, put in more hours, outperformed everybody else and sold more, then everything should kind of fall into place and take care of itself. But the reality is, it doesn't work like that. That hustle mentality, yeah, it might sound good on Instagram, but at one point, it massively compromised my health. I was burnt out, I was anxious, and for the first time in my life, I started to experience panic attacks. I was operating like a bull in a china shop, busy doing all of the wrong things because I didn't understand the significance of KPIs. And as a result, it nearly cost me everything. And when it comes to KPIs, there's a common trap that keeps a lot of business owners stuck. And that is they're tracking the wrong things. They're chasing the vanity metrics, likes, comments, followers, website visits, which, look, don't get me wrong, they had their place, but not when you're ignoring the real numbers that actually drive growth, profit, and freedom. So in this video, I'm gonna be breaking down exactly what KPIs are, why they matter, and how understanding your KPIs are gonna completely transform your business and change the way you scale. Because knowing your KPIs isn't just about making more money, it's about finally having control of your business instead of your business controlling you. When you know your numbers, growth becomes so much easier and it starts becoming guesswork and starts becoming more predictable. So KPIs, or key performance indicators, aren't just numbers. They're the truth about how your business is performing, and they act as your scorecard. It's a bit like when you get into your car, you know, in front of you, you got your dashboard that's gonna be telling you exactly what's going on. You know, you got things like your speedometer, your temperature gauge, your fuel and your oil levels. And by glancing at the dashboard, you instantly know the health of your vehicle. So if your fuel light comes on, you know that you need to start thinking about stopping up and filling within a petrol garage within the next few hours before it becomes a bigger problem. And likewise, warning light flashes, you know that there's something that needs to be addressed. And it's the same with your business. Your KPIs, they're your dashboard. They're going to give you the insight into the health of your company. If something isn't working properly, it will show in your numbers. And that's going to give you the chance to fix it before it turns into a major issue. Your KPIs are going to tell you exactly what's working, what's not, and where you need to be focusing next. So we have 2 types of indicators. You have your leading indicators and you have your lagging indicators. Now, some of your KPIs are going to help you predict what's about to happen within your business. So for example, if you're reporting and managing KPIs such as leads booked, proposals sent, or calls schedules, these are going to enable you to help determine your future projected forecast of the business. So you can forecast how much revenue you're likely to make as a result of these leading indicators. But then you have your lagging indicators. So these tell you what's already happened within your business. So some examples of this would be your total revenue or profit. So you need to be using these both in order to successfully manage your business correctly. But unfortunately, there are a number of common mistakes that founders make that stop them from leveraging the power of KPIs effectively. So the first of those mistakes would be they're tracking too many things. So what they tend to do is overload themselves with unnecessary information that just causes confusion and creates a whole lot of noise. And because of that, they're not able to focus their time and attention on the KPIs that truly move the needle and drive the business forward. And secondly, they track the wrong things. They get sucked into the hype of chasing the vanity metrics, but they provide little or no impact to their business. Yes, it might look good from the outside if you've got 500,000 followers, but what's the point of that if you're not able to convert those followers into sales? Okay, so they look great, they look pretty, but it's not helping you in your business. And thirdly, and probably the most common mistake, is that they track nothing at all. Literally, they're just pissing in the wind, not knowing what direction they're heading, because you only know what you know, right? And so this is why videos like this are very powerful to help you get back on track and give you clarity about the things that you should be focusing on. Because when you're either focusing on too many things, tracking the wrong things, or not tracking anything at all, you're generally going to be making your decisions on gut feeling, instinct, intuition. And although it does serve its place in business, without being able to support that with data, you're making your decisions on emotion and not evidence. And this isn't the traits of highly successful entrepreneurs. Secondly, it can also give you a full sense of progress. You might feel like you're winning, or you might feel like you're doing the right things, but without tracking your KPIs, you could actually be hemorrhaging money within the business or be making losses. And that's not where you want to be. Then obviously we mentioned the data overload, you just cause confusion. And so you're never able to steer your business in the right direction. And it's going to result in stalled growth and loss of control, and find yourself working in your business instead of working on it because you're overloaded with tasks and objectives. Everything's falling back on your plate because you haven't got the right systems and processes in place. And so if you're stuck in delivery, if you're firefighting, if you're wondering why growth feels like guesswork instead of science, it's because you're not utilizing the power of KPI. I remember when I was scaling my first company, Gemini, and I used to get so obsessed over revenue. Every month, this was the only thing I used to focus on. And I fell into the trap in thinking that if I just spent more on ads, then naturally growth would follow. And in theory, it did for a while. But if you're operating a business and that business has crack, it has operational issues, then when you scale your company, what's going to happen is you're going to be scaling the problems. You're going to be scaling the cracks, and those cracks are going to widen. And that pressure is going to expose every weakness until eventually things are going to start to break. But the real breakthrough came when I started to track the right things. And that's where the KPIs came in, because they're not just numbers on the dashboard. They're the early warning system of how well your business is operating. So the moment I started to track the right KPIs, things like client churn rate, client satisfaction, booked calls, cost per acquisition, revenue per employee, and my EBITDA, and that was a big game changer. Then within 6 months, I went from overwhelmed, burnt out, to scaling in a way that didn't require me to be working crazy hours or weekends, because I was working smarter and not harder. And as a result, our profit margins increased, my stress levels dropped massively, and the company kept performing even when I stepped back and I wasn't in the office. And that's because I was no longer trying to be involved in every part of the business to know what was going on. The KPIs, or the KPI dashboard that I set up, provided me with the intel that I needed in order to make the right decisions. And that's the power of KPIs. They turn chaos into clarity. So here are a few examples of KPIs that you must be tracking in order to regain control and manage your business in the right way. So firstly, we have sales KPIs. So these are going to measure how effectively you're converting your opportunities into cash. So you have your sales conversion rate. So that's the percentage of people you convert from being a prospect into a paying customer. Then you have things like your average transaction value. Then your revenue per client, and your sales cycle length. So your sales cycle is how long from them becoming a prospect does it take you to convert them into a paying customer. Then you've got your sales and marketing KPIs. So these track the consistency and the cost efficiency of your pipeline. So some examples of this would be your cost per lead, your CPL, which is how much you pay for every lead. Then you have your click-through rate, which is your CTR. Then your book calls, so how many people that come through your funnel and end up you jumping on the call with them. Although the book calls may not be applicable to every service business, it's still something that's very common within funnels. Then you have your return on ad spend, also known as your ROAS. Then you have things like your average transaction value. So in sales and marketing, guys, in order for you to effectively scale, these are key, and I'm going to be going into these in greater depth in the next video. So make sure, if you haven't already, you like and subscribe to stay up to date with each video release that happens every week. Next, you have your operations and delivery KPIs. Now, for me, this is big because I want to build something that I'm proud of. I like to create legacy. And so when it comes to standards and quality, these are going to be imperative to make sure that you're satisfying the needs and expectations of your customer. So these show how efficiently your business fulfills its work once it's sold. So you have things like your client satisfaction scores. So you might send out client surveys or reviews periodically, and what that comes back with. So you might set yourself goals in relation to that. Then you have your client churn rate. Now, how many clients you're actually losing. Then you've got your job project completion rate, and you have things like your project margin or your cost per project. So these are things that you need to be tracking to make sure you're delivering a high quality service and your customers are always happy. Then you have your KPIs in relation to people and leadership, because no business scales without a strong team. In fact, if it scales, it doesn't do so for long. It's unsustainable because you haven't got the right team in place and things are going to start to crack. So examples of KPIs that relate to people and leadership are your employee retention rate. Key. Happy employees mean they stay longer, they're more contented, they're not looking for other opportunities. That's going to result in you spending less on training and onboarding and not having to pick up the shit every time somebody leaves you in the lurch and causes chaos as a result. Then you have your things like your revenue per employee or your team performance score or your output per employee. Then you've got things like your employee satisfaction score. So we mentioned the customer satisfaction score, but also your employee satisfaction score is equally as important, because a happy, engaged team are going to be a lot more productive, hence increasing your business performance. That would generally equate to higher revenue and higher profitability. Then we have your financial KPIs, right? These are going to measure the health, stability, and the scalability of your company. So some examples of this would be things like your gross profit margin, your net profit margin, your monthly recurring revenue, your MRR. But not all businesses actually track this, but there are some types of businesses that do. So this might be relating to you. Then you have your customer lifetime value, your LTV. Next, we have the big one, EBITDA. And I give EBITDA a lot of emphasis because it wasn't until I began to incorporate my EBITDA into my KPI dashboard that things changed dramatically for me, my business. And it's probably the number one reason why I was able to scale my company to multiple seven figures and exit for over $6 million. But I think this deserves its own video. So I'm going to be creating a video in relation to this and how it impacts your business and why it's a necessity for every small business owner to be tracking this, okay? But tracking your numbers, your KPIs, is only half of the battle. Because if you're not actively acting upon the information, then you're literally just wasting your time. So you have to be reviewing your KPIs on a weekly basis. And some of your KPIs, you may even need to be reviewing them on a daily basis, like when it comes to your marketing and your sales KPIs. So really and truly, you should be including your KPI reviews at least once a week as part of either your weekly management meeting or your weekly team meeting. And so within this meeting, I always recommend doing these reviews as of a Monday. Then you have the opportunity to set your goals and your targets for that particular week and get everybody aligned. But within that meeting, you need to be reviewing your KPIs and looking at what worked, what KPIs have slipped or dropped, what sort of action steps you need to take in order to rectify and bring it back to where it needs to be, who may be accountable for this, and what other areas of the business or the KPI data can we look to enhance or optimize, and how do we enhance them? Yeah? So your whole KPI dashboard is totally useless if you're not using it as a tool to then drive your decisions. Because when you start tracking your KPIs, what it does, it begins to turn chaos into a level of control. And then that action that you take as a result of your KPIs turns that control into growth. And that's the place where you want to be as a founder. So let's look at some real world examples and take a look at some of the biggest organizations globally and how they use KPIs in order to stay ahead of the crowd. You've got Starbucks. Now they pay strong attention to their KPIs in order to maintain their operational consistency. So what they discovered was that every 10 seconds of wait time impacted both their revenue and their customer satisfaction, okay? So what they then did as a result is built strict KPIs around audit accuracy, speed, and staff happiness. Because they realized that the happier their staff was, it impacted the visit experience. They're going to be more joyful, they're going to be more open, they're going to be more receptive, more welcoming. And this translated to happier customers. So as a result of them doubling down on these KPIs and holding their team accountable, it resulted in a consistent level of service across their 35,000 stores worldwide. And the big lesson here is it's going to be impossible for you to replicate excellence at any scale without you having some kind of measuring tool in place, i.e. KPIs. Next, we have American Express, and they pay special attention to their KPIs in relation to customer experience. So Amex track Net Promoter Score, their call resolution rate, and also their client retention. So they've linked faster resolutions to loyalty and turned those into team KPIs and created one of the highest customer satisfaction records in finance. So what I have learned to be true with American Express is that in order to maintain high KPIs within these areas, what they do is give their customer service team a level of autonomy in order to be able to make decisions that create a positive customer experience. And so I've had this quite recently. I've been an Amex holder for over 10 years, and I can honestly say second to none. They're hands down probably one of the best companies in the finance space. And what the key lesson here is that loyalty isn't luck. It's cultivated, it's created with intent. And by putting these KPIs in place, they're ensuring that they hold every single one of their team and departments accountable to ensure that their customers have an amazing experience, which then drives their loyalty and ensures that their churn rate is minimal and their customers stay happy and stay with them for a long term. And so the main learning outcome out of this video should have been that every successful company runs on KPIs, and they act as the bridge between chaos and control and between stress and scale. Because the difference between constantly chasing your tail and being overwhelmed and being in command is simple, because you need to know your numbers. And there's a reason that Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets managed. And so if you're not tracking it, then you can't control it. And if you can't control it, then you certainly can't scale it. So if you're serious about growing your business, then you need to stop guessing and start measuring. Because when you know your numbers, you then start to take back control and growth stops being guesswork and starts becoming predictable. I'm Ryan Jackson, and if you found this video helpful, make sure you like and subscribe, because on the next video, I'm gonna be sharing with you the 10 KPIs that helped me scale my company to 1 million.